Magandang araw muli sa inyong lahat. Welcome sa ating channel, Sir Lopez Vlog. Sa araw na ito ay magkakaroon muli tayo ng self-evaluation dito sa subject na Human Behavior and Victimology. 25 katanungan ang susukat sa inyong academic preparation pagdating sa subject na ito at ang mga kasagutan ay makikita lamang dito sa ating description box. Okay? Kung nakahanda na kayo, start na natin sa question number 1. In assessing human behavior, different methods were used. What method is used when applying diagnose in treatment of serious emotional or mental disorders or disturbances? Letter A, experimental method. Letter B, clinical method. Letter C, naturalistic observation. Or letter D, systematic observation. Number 2. What factor affects human behavior when heredity is the primary consideration? Letter A, biological. Letter B, atavism. Letter C, environmental. Or letter D, sociological. Number 3. Sigmund Freud postulated that the mind consists roughly of 3 overlapping divisions. Which of the following is not included? Letter A, unconscious. Letter B, preconscious. Letter C, conscious. Or letter D, post-conscious. Number 4. The unconscious part of the personality which serves as the reservoir of the primitive and biological drives and urges. Letter A, ego. Letter B, ID. Letter C, superego. Or letter D, none of them. Number 5. Parts of the mind that mediates between the conscious and the unconscious and is responsible for reality testing and a sense of personal identity. Letter A, ego. Letter B, ID. Letter C, superego. Or letter D, none of them. Number 6. Characterized by a lean, slender body build with slight muscular development. A, Ectomorphic. B, Endomorphic. Letter C, Mesomorphic. Or letter D, Endomorphic. 7. What is the triggering factors that drives or moves a person to act? It is a psychological state of tissue deprivation. A, drives. B, needs. C, motivation. Or letter D, passion. Number 8. Human needs arise out of a person's biological or psychological makeup. A, true. B, false. C, may be true. Or letter D, may be false. 9. Love and affection. 4, security. 4, growth and development. And recognition from other human beings are considered as blank. Letter A, primary motives. Letter B, primary needs. Letter C, primary motivation. Or letter D, primary drives. Number 10. Which of the following is an unpleasant feelings that results from the blocking of motive satisfaction? Letter A, obstacles. Letter B, hindrance. Letter C, frustration. Or letter D, guilt. 11. Most normal persons react to frustration in the following ways, except letter A, withdrawal or treatment. Letter B, developing feelings of inferiority. Letter C, aggression. Or letter D, committing suicide. Number 12. The unconscious techniques used to prevent a person's self-image from being damaged. A. Aggression. B. Defense mechanisms. Letter C. Anger. Or letter D. Developing feelings of inferiority. 13. A person faces two undesirable situations in which the avoidance of one is the exposure to the other, resulting to an intense emotion. Letter A, double avoidance conflict. Letter B, double approach conflict. Letter C, approach avoidance conflict. Or letter D, multiple approach avoidance conflict. 14. An intangible feeling that seems to evade any effort to solve it. It is also called neurotic fear. It could be intense, it could be low, and can be a motivating force. Letter A, anger. Letter B, anxiety. Letter C, aggression. Or letter D, frustration. 15. A behavior characterized by efficient perception of reality, self-knowledge, ability to exercise voluntary control over his behavior, self-esteem and acceptance, productivity in his ability to form affectionate relationship with others. Letter A, normal behavior. Letter B, abnormal behavior. Letter C, emotional disturbance. Or letter D, psychological defective. Number 16 refers to strategies that are pursued to prevent the development of illegal activities, the anticipation, recognition, appraisal of a crime risk, and the intention of some action to remove or reduce it. A. Crime control. B. Victimization. C. Crime prevention. Or letter D. Crime resistance. 17. Means making the offender's task more difficult through advanced planning. Letter A. Crime prevention. Letter B. Victimization prevention. Letter C. Crime control. Or letter D. Crime resistance. Number 18. A mental condition present from early childhood characterized by great difficulty in communicating and forming relationship with other people and in using language and abstract concepts. Letter A. Autism. Letter B. Hypnosis. Letter C. Schizophrenia. Or letter D. All of them. 19. The major factor which guide individuals' behavior. Letter A, unconscious behavior. Letter B, conscious behavior. Letter C, both A and B. Or letter D, both are wrong. 20. Classification of human behavior which pertains to reason rather than emotion. Letter A, rational. Letter B, irrational. Letter C, overt. Or letter D, covert. 21. Components of the human personality except letter A, ID. Letter B, PDL. Letter C, ego. Or letter D, superego. The group of mild functional personality disorders in which there is no gross personality disorganization and the individual is not required for hospitalization. Letter A, Neurotic Paradox, letter B. Psychotic Behaviors, letter C. Neurotic Behavior, or letter D. Psychopathic Behaviors. 23. They are characterized by mild depressions, fear and tensions, and mild stresses. Letter A. Asthenic Disorders. B. Phobic Disorders. Letter C. Anxiety Disorders. Or letter D. Somatoform Disorders. 24. The kind of disorder having complaints of bodily symptoms that suggest the presence of physical problem but no organic basis can be found. Letter A. Asthenic disorders. Letter B. Phobic disorders. Letter C. Somatoform disorders. Or letter D. Anxiety disorder. 25. A neurotic pattern in which symptoms of some physical malfunction or loss of control without any underlying organic abnormality. A. Phobic disorders. B. Anxiety disorders. C. Somatoform disorders. Or letter D. Conversion disorders. So natapos na natin ang ating sinagawang self-evaluation sa araw na ito. Maraming salamat sa pakikibahagi sa ating sinasagawang pagsasanay para sa preparation ninyo for the board examination. Okay, so maraming salamat again. Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. See you again next time.